everybody else thinks that's fine, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Elon,
sure.
I think Elon, you're the host, maybe? Yeah, so I need...
Yeah, I'm the host. I just started the recording.
Okay.
I have to leave, but I just want to make sure that the call is running.
Thanks. But I think if you are leaving, maybe the recording stops. Do you want to transfer hosting?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Ezra.
Yeah, it's still recording. So yeah, I gave you the host.
Okay. So yeah, let's wait one more minute and then start. So what's the weather now in Argentina? Is it summer?
Well, right now it's spring, so yeah, nice weather might be coming soon. Today is very cold. But yeah,
we have the opposite. We have heat waves now. Heat waves.
Yeah. Oh man. No. Here I'm just waiting for the spring. I was supposed to go surfing today, but nah, it's very cold. No way I'm getting into the water.
So I guess maybe I can say in the meanwhile, I mean, I guess I'll get into much more details. So I just sat in the last hour to prepare the call, and I just wrote notes to myself of what I think would be interesting to cover. And then I thought maybe rather than just note for myself, maybe I just share a screen and actually, speak from my notes. I thought it would be interesting because I started with a short list of notes and it became like this never-ending list of notes. Oh, Pepo is here. Hey, Pepo.
Hey, Mate.
So, what's up? Good to see you again. Yeah, so the purpose of the call is, from my end, firstly to get to know you guys, because I've kind of like following your virtual avatars for a long time, and I know like Pepo, for example, before, but others we never met. But also mostly the reason for this call from my end was that we are standing right now, and I think in a critical moment. I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it is a critical moment, both in terms of the space, but also internally in DAOstack. Like we need to make I would say big decisions, and I think that we in order to make those decisions best, I thought that the best thing was to speak with you guys, share with you the information, the questions, get your input, and so it's really important for me, and we need to converge on those decisions by the end of this week, basically. So we're going to start another cycle of development. So it's I think a good opportunity to sync up. So this is for me, from my end, the goal. But then also the other side is just let you ask anything that you want to ask. So it can also be open-ended in that end. So shall we start maybe?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can just share a screen of my notes. So maybe since I think I don't know, I guess I assume that you don't know me or much about myself, so I thought to give you a tiny bit of introduction about myself. So I had a crush on organizations or on cooperatives actually for about 2 decades, starting age 18. And then around age 25, I actually practiced that. I founded a food cooperative. That was during my PhD. I did PhD and postdoc in physics, in high energy theoretical physics, in string theory, if you're familiar with that. And cooperative was sort of like my hobby. So I founded the food cooperative. I managed that in parallel to the research, and I learned from that experience. I learned the power of cooperatives. It was super powerful. There was 40 people collaborating really nicely, and about 10 people very, very actively so. And I also learned the downside of cooperative. It was full of friction. It was not very effective. Let's put it that way. I mean, at the end of the day, it would be cheaper to just go and buy the things in the grocery, because the time that we wasted on arguing on everything we basically wasted more money than we saved. So I did my PhD, I did my postdoc, and then after the postdoc, I wanted to found another initiative, and this time I had an idea for a ride-sharing initiative. That was end of 2013, November 2013, and a friend of mine that helped me to launch the project told me about this thing, Bitcoin and Ethereum, that was just announced in the white paper. So I looked in Ethereum, and that was the end of my career, basically, because I saw the light, I saw the vision of organizations, of cooperatives, and I decided to basically ditch my postdoc. 8 months later, I officially quitted the postdoc and went full into the blockchain rabbit hole. So in the first year and a half, I managed the Lazuz decentralized application. It was the first decentralized application on the Bitcoin blockchain. We used what was called back then the Mastercoin protocol. By the way, and a funny anecdote, the guy that was the CEO of Mastercoin back in the days, he was the guy that coined the name DAOstack. It's a funny anecdote. He was an early investor in Bitcoin. So so we did the decentralized ride-sharing program on the Bitcoin blockchain. We were in close touch with the Ethereum guys before their token sale because we knew that we want to migrate to Ethereum. Of course, we participated in the sale. We were all happy, happy and hippie. And at that point, I decided to quit the project. So maybe I didn't say that when I started the Lazuz project, the ride-sharing project, I decided it will also be a DAO by itself. So it will be a collaborative project. So there was no company, no structure. I sort of like managed it unofficially, but it was a mess. It was a lot of mess. No system, no voting, just arguing basically. And at some point I decided that I want to focus and be more efficient with my time. So I quitted Lazuz and started my own company, which was Backfeed. That was January 2015, and raised some money. And basically we started to build operating system for DAOs. Operated for a year and a half, basically based on angel investments. And just right after then the DAO came out, we were participating in the improvement of the protocol, and then was the hack. And then we ran out of money and we decided not to try to refund. And I decided to take a break for 6 months to rethink about the model, to rethink about the architectures, the protocols. And then I restarted the project as DAOstack with a new partner. This is Adam, our CTO. So this was January 2017. We worked for like 10 months before we incorporated the company and started to raise funds again. And in May 2018, we did a token sale. And I guess like pretty much know about everything else from there. So this was sort of like my journey, my self-journey. Maybe a little bit about my journey with DXdao. And the reason I say that is that I just assumed that you never saw me. So I just assumed that like the base assumption would be that I have no relation to that in any sense, but actually I'm tightly following it for a long time. It actually was my main focus for almost a year, but all at the back end, at the very, very back end. So just to slightly give you a hint of how it looked like. So we spent like a few months, like maybe 3 months, almost just one-on-one, me and Martin to the design period, to design the protocols, the architecture. Back then there was no such thing. There was no Argon agent. There was no avatar. We designed how a DAO, like we had sketches of how a DAO operates a system, another system. So we designed that for about 3 months. Then DAOstack took the mission to develop it and launch it. So we worked more than 6 months. It was the main focus of DAOstack. Right after the launch, we set again together to design like what could become out of that, like the scope, the brand, the strategy, and even start the early stage of designing the token sale. Then at that point, I suggested that none of us wanted to, we actually wanted to let it live by itself. And we decided to, I suggested to engage the org in there and connect the org with Gnosis and Gnosis grant. And that's also got to developing the bonding curve. And I just kept, so we kept DAOstack basically out of the officially development after the launch, but I personally participated in the Red Bootstrap and the token sale. So I can say I'm a token holder. So this was our journey in the DXdao. Now I want to tell you why I favor it, and this is my my own view, but I think it reflects of DAOstack vision. And I'll be precise about that. So firstly, because this is really the first, I think, actual collaborative DAO, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean by collaborative DAO, which is what I always visioned for. And that I'll tell you in a few moments also the journey that we went in that direction. But what do we mean by collaborative DAOs? So you can think of different level of coordination among DAOs, and I'm just robustly telling a few levels. I'm sure I'm not telling anything new to you, but just giving names to things that you are familiar with. So for me, Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other blockchain is a DAO. It's just a DAO that makes very particular kind of choices. In this case, the choices about blocks, but it is a decentralized organization that makes choices about blocks. Maker, for example, is a little bit more complicated DAO. It makes slightly more complicated choices, but still very, very narrowing, very narrowed down. It makes decision about protocol parameters only. Later, we thought about the idea of grant DAOs. So now you're making decisions about allocation of grants to projects. So you're not trying to collaboratively develop things yourself, but you're just allocating funds to grants. So we called it, back in the day, we called it grant DAO. And then collaboration DAO or collaborative DAO is actually, you're actually allocating grants or funding and rewards to missions and tasks. So not even projects, you're actually rewarding missions and tasks. In that sense, you're really the closest thing to to decentralized organization in the regular sense of organization. What I think is the next step into the future, I think we're going to see fractal mesh network of DAOs, and this basically was the earliest vision of the white paper in DAOstack, but it was just such a long journey, and I think for what I'm excited for, because I actually see this vision now starting to emerge. It's not yet there, but I think it's starting to emerge. I think there is yet a long way to go. I'll tell you about many things that we have built and many things that we want to build, but I think the journey is long. But we start seeing the fruits. I think DXdao is the first, I think, significant fruit of that. So this is why I personally favor that. Okay, so some background about DAOstack vision and strategy. So firstly, the original vision was always to become an operating system and platform for DAOs. And particularly, we wanted to focus on large-scale collaboration. It's not that DAOs of 20 people is not interesting. I think there are many, many interesting use cases for 20 people, but I think it's not world-changing as 1 million people working together or 5,000 people working together. And when I say world-changing, I mean not just changing, some, like if 20 people work together, you do the same thing more effectively, right? But if 5,000 people will work together, you would do new things. You would actually change the power structure in the world. And I think it cannot go more dramatic than that. So that's my vision. And that's why I'm mostly interested in large scale collaborations. And maybe I'll get back to that if you wish and have more energy, I can tell you something about common at the end. I really believe in ecosystem approach. Like I really believe that if you are building a DAO, you should build it as a DAO as much as possible. But I have to tell you that I'm also burnt. Like I started that way. It was a big mess. And then I said, okay, let me build that as a company. I'll get back to that when we are mature enough. And it's a question, maybe now we are mature enough. So it's a question, when do we want to start doing that as a DAO? But I call that the ecosystem approach. So dog fooding and Be It. We ran, before the DXdao, we ran experiment, like Genesis DAO experiment. It was, we called it Genesis Alpha. It ran for 1.5 years. We had over 200 people, reputation holders, actively asking for reputation. We had more than 50 regularly active people. And we funded that DAO with more than $600,000, which was allocated to missions, tasks, grants, all sort of things. I think including the DXdao itself. It has, I won't get into it. If you're part of that, you're probably familiar with that. If not, it's a whole new story. It's a long story. I just ran, so I'm still coughing from that. So we had a lot, the summary is that we had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of lessons, a lot of good successes, and also some failures. And it took us part of the reason that, one reason we got quiet for 6 months, like basically, I would even say, I will boldly admit, we're neglecting the ecosystemic side of things. Part of that was Genesis. Like we invested so much energy in fueling Genesis that at some point we said, okay, we need a pause. We need to rethink that. And for 6 months, we're doing quiet ecosystem. We're doing products, and we'll come back to ecosystem later. So that was one reason. So the second reason is to focus on the products, and I'll tell you more later about Common. And another third reason was to reorganize the team. We had some really big changes in the team, so it was quite dramatic, and we need to reorganize to put more energy on reorganizing the team. So that was the past 6-7 months, basically. So we were quite quiet on ecosystem. Still, we didn't want to ditch ecosystem, so I asked Ezra. So Ezra before that was on our marketing team, and I asked Ezra if he's willing to unite marketing and ecosystem and Alchemy, like everything together, and ask if he can lead the whole thing. It was really important to me so that we keep some movement or some, I would say, I don't know, foot in the door in this direction, in such that we can revive that later. So I asked Ezra if he can lead that, and I think with the little capacity that we allocated to that, I think it did keep it alive. And now is the big question: do we revive it, and do we go all in on that again? Is that the time? So vision stayed the same all along. So really, if you go to the white paper, read the white paper, the vision is still there. It's the same vision, but the focus of development and strategy somewhat changed over the years. Okay, quite a lot actually. So we started with really building like hardcore OS, like contract architecture, very modular, very generic. In fact, complete, like governance complete. You could do any governance system with that. Then we realized that we actually build a decentralized app directly on top of the contracts back in 2017, and it took like forever to upload it, basically. And then we realized that it would have never worked like that. So then we started to work the full DAOstack. So if you're familiar with the code, like the infra, which is the protocol, then the Arc, which is the modular architecture, the archives are the registries, the Arc graph, the indexing, JavaScript library, React library. So now you have like the full stack, and now it's still hard to build apps, but it's like 100 times easier than it was 3 years ago. Then we realized that it's not enough. I mean, in our vision, it was thinking that we will just build the stack and people will come and build the apps. But what we realized is that the distance between what we had in mind and what people consciousness were at that point was so big that no one would just come and build apps on that. No one understood how the stack works or what even can be done with that. The mileage was just too much, the ramp up. So we decided we have to focus on building our own platform, and that's Alchemy. We still very much wanted the platform to be ideally as generic as possible as the backend, so modular and generic, but it was almost impossible to, in the way that we designed the backend, it was almost impossible to maintain that modularity all the way to the UI and also keep a sanity in the UX. And I think at the end, we somewhat landed on a balance, which I think, retrospectively, I admit, I think it's like not good from both sides. So it's not totally generic, like you cannot do anything with Alchemy or everything. And also the UX is not good enough. So you need, at some point, you need to make a choice. You need to improve the way you're modularizing the full stack, or to a little bit narrow down your product. And then we saw still that adoption was slow, and we felt that the market needs even more, like we need to bring it to the market on a nicer spoon. And we decided that for some time, we're going to focus on end-to-end product. We're just going to build like the lean, old-fashioned product design philosophy on top of the stack. And we're going to bring to the community 1 or 2 fully fledged applications. So that's exactly what we were doing for the past 8 months. We were fully focused, not fully, but 80% or 70-80% focused of the company was to build Common. So Common is a mobile native, like ordinary app for the mainstream that is basically an interface for DAOs, or as we call them, commons for the common. And the second So this was already built, and we're ready to launch it. We're launching a pilot in about 2 weeks, and we want to launch the actual app on app stores about months later. And again, if you want, I'll be happy to show you a demo. It's still early stage, but it's actually working. Maybe some bugs still remain. So then the other one is, again, going back to Alchemy, again, seeing that adoption is slow and thinking, how can we make Alchemy much more product oriented, much more user oriented? And there is no yet name for that. Just give it a code name called Mini Alchemy. So some Alchemy may be a little bit less modular, but it looks much nicer and much easier to use. So this is the next thing, basically. And we already started. So Ezra, basically, together with Adam, they've designed that for the past 2 months. And now we are just before the moment to make the big decision, like if it goes right or left. And I'll share with you all of the questions. So what next? Next, there's a long list of things we want to do. We would definitely want to iterate on different infrastructures. It's not a secret. So gas cost, security, modularity, APIs, all sort of things. So we want to have massive iteration on the infrastructures. Some of them are already underway. As mentioned before, and this is a question mark, but I mean, it's a question mark how to do that. But we want to refocus again on the ecosystem. We had 7 months of quiet, but I think now we have capacity again to refocus on the ecosystem. But the question is how to do that. And one option, which is my favor, but I'm sort of like poking people to see what the reaction, to see if it makes sense or not. But my favorite one is actually reviving the Genesis DAO, but this time for real, not Genesis Alpha, but the actual Genesis, empowering that DAO with basically all of the reserve of DAOstack, with ownership of the products and much more. So I'll share with you more in a moment. We want to give much more focus on the genuine utility and the holographic consensus. And I think that also becomes more and more relevant as large collaborative DAOs emerge. And I think they are emerging. They're emerging very soon. And I think that maybe DXdao is going to be the first one of them. We'll see. There is some competitors, I think. Maybe Sushi DAO is a competitor. But basically, once DAOs will start holding tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, basically they will attract. They will hit a nonlinear curve. Basically, they will start to attract larger and larger bodies and more developer community. And this is becoming a nonlinear effect. It's a classical network effect, but for the first time, not a network effect of application, but a network effect of organization. And at some point they will just cross. They will just have so much dev capacity. They will have so many decisions to make, and this will be the starting of large scale decision making or high frequency decision making. And that's where you need holographic consensus really. So now it's hard to see the value of holographic consensus because we don't really need it. So it's an extra. It's a bonus. So this is in terms of strategy. So where we are, I'm kind of like flowing from the past to the present and to the future. So now I'm roughly in the present. So the new products. What is the new product? What do we want to achieve with the new product? So firstly, what are the top improvements, at least as I think, or at least as I see from the reactions of the community? But that's all soon where I want to get your input. So top improvements, I think it's easy that number one is gas cost and scaling. This is already underway. We've already researched all of the big second layer providers. We've already deployed our DAO contracts on the second layer. This is something that is underway. It's hard for me to estimate if it's going to be a 2 months program or 4 months program. I think more towards the 2, but I don't want to commit for that, but that's roughly the ballpark. So we're going to have like a layer 2 DAO solution in the next few months and sensible gas cost. I think the second big thing is UX. It's not that we've neglected it as much as we've just put more focus on other things. And when I say end-to-end product, I mainly mean UX. It has to have a sane UX. It can have much better UX than right now. And we will gonna put much effort on that front. Another one more technical is the ability to make easy generic calls. Part of that came also from understanding that almost everything we can think of, not all, everything, but actually research all possible features and apps that occur today in the DAO ecosystem. I have a list of more than 30, and about half of them can be, don't have to be, but can be implemented via generic calls. So that is to say that we realize that generic call is very, very strong. We were the first to implement that, but not only now, but recently we realized how strong they are. So we want to put more focus on generic call, make it very easy. The second reason, because there is already a standard. Gnosis with Safe did their generic call into the Safe apps. It's standard. There is a growing ecosystem of apps already integrated with Gnosis, about 20 of them. And if we just align ourselves with that API, with that standard, not only it's easier to develop on top of that, but we're just earning 20 apps right out of the box, basically. So that's I think a big improvement. Another one, which I think is closer to the heart of many users, is simplifying the voting machine, and particularly simplifying holographic consensus. There are many ways to simplify that. So one of them is just simpler protocol interface. So just to say, holographic consensus I developed on my own in my spare time, in like 5% of my time. So we never actually hired a researcher, and now we're actually going to hire a full-time expert researcher, because that's, I think, the only way we can really push that front in a normal pace. So it's going to have much simpler protocol interface. For example, one I think a really important thing is that the no staking when you don't need it. So right now you sort of like have to stake, but sometimes, like for example, if you are 6 people and 4 are voting, or 3 are voting, why you should engage that? So you should have holographic consensus automatically engaging when you actually need it, and like shutting down when you don't need it. So this is like something like quorum fallback. Better and more effective protocol, that's something that we've already been working on. So we already have some big improvements, both in terms of resiliency to manipulations. We've researched like a few dozens of manipulations that can take place, and we've found solutions to basically all of them. And then there's also the second part is improvement, like how to make, in a way, you can measure holographic consensus effectivity by sort of like the level of resilience. You can measure the level of resilience over the cost of governance, the DAOstack. So we realize that we can much increase that ratio, like get much more resilience for less cost. So this is effectivity. Another possible direction that we already know how to do, but it's also a question to the users if they do want to have it. It's abstracting staking altogether. So what does it mean that we're going to abstract staking altogether if we're going to do that? What it means is that the normal user will not see holographic consensus. The normal user will not see staking. The staking happens at the back end by professional predictors, and particularly staking bots. So we actually designed bots that actually hybrid human bots that can make really good predictions, and by that can bootstrap the prediction network. This is actually the real genuine utility. So now you cannot see that, but once you have 2,000 developers and you have 2,000 proposals in line, and you're doing staking, as long as you're doing staking with Gen, you're gaining the prediction network effect, all of the predictors that are predicting in Gen tokens, and particularly the bot system that we're going to develop to boost that up. Last thing is non-Gen staking. I think there is no reason that we have to stake with Gen, so you should be able to stake with any token. And then of course the question, should it allow you to stake with any token, but you're converging it to Gen and keeping the Gen so that it's boosting the Gen economy, or even allowing non-Gen staking and not without converting it to Gen, but then you're losing the network effect. So we might even offer that flexibility, and then you can decide if you want to tap into that network effect or not. So that's a question. So simplifying voting machine. And finally, where I think it's really important, simplifying APIs, and that's much faster innovation, and also parsability or parsing ability. So the generic call is an example. Like you make it very generic, but you can parse the information and get like by the ABI and get like a fully, in a way, the front end can communicate at the same modularity with the back end, which is not the case for skins, for example, right now. So we want to have much greater parsability. So these are improvements we want to pursue in the next few months. What are the open questions? So these are really big questions, and I think you should be interested in those questions, and I really want to hear what you think about them. So one of them is, do we want to build a whole new product, or do we want to do an alchemy iteration? Again, there's the upside and downside to both. Like when you make a new product, you have more ability to learn from lessons and make it better in some sense. But of course, you're somewhat getting distance from where you were, and you do more work. Also harder maybe migration. Another one, no architecture or just arc iteration. We have ideas how to simplify significantly arc, but we're going to be really a new architecture, or to do it in steps and doing just one iteration on arc right now. Another one, do we want to offer holographic consensus from day one, or just quickly even provide quorum solution and engage holographic consensus later in a better shape? Another question, how much flexibility to leave open at the backend? So right now we have full flexibility at the backend, you can do anything, but that's also harder to work with and harder to parse and harder everything basically. We have ideas how to limit what you can do and still have a lot, but not everything. So you have less, but it's easier to work with. So we're trying to fine tune how much less. So there's like a spectrum inside. And then this is really strategic. Like there is now DAO booming in the DeFi world, but these kind of DAOs are mostly looking for controlling parameters and yield farming. But then there is the other market, which is sort of like the collaborative DAO, which I think the DXdao is the flagship of. Now, those two markets are not totally different. You know, the Sushi DAO still want to start make a developer fund, and I'm sure that DXdao want to start doing yield farming. But again, from a product standpoint, what should be the focus of the focus? Like enabling quick engaging in DAOs with simple platforms and controlling parameters, or enabling more sophisticated collaborative tools? So this is a strategic question. Now the end of this is just to say that this whole process of strategy, whole process of specifying the product, like the high level product and all that, we gave a timeline to end that by the end of this week. And that's why I thought that we cannot converge that without getting a call with you guys. So I think it's really a critical moment to hear your input and help us into making these good choices. Almost ending here, the approach we're taking now is much more solid. So we're not in the first iteration, we designed mostly from our mind. Now we're going to work with design partners. We want to speak with the actual project that are either live right now or going to launch soon, and to see what they need and to work with them. And who are the design partners? I think from my end, I think DXdao is the most promising one. And then we have another 5 to 10 list of 5 to 10 other protocols that want to launch. And of course, we have NextDAO as well, but about 5 to 10 others that are going to launch in the next few months. So we want to work with them as well. But as far as DXdao want to move on that trajectory, I think this will be the most interesting conversation. So this is, we'll go back to that question because it's the most interesting one for you guys. To close on that, Genesis DAO, this idea, still just an idea. There's a question mark there. But what the Genesis DAO could be, it could be a DAO that controls the entire products of DAOstack, the ENS domains, the whitelists and registries. It could control the entire gen reserve. So we've mined 60 million gen all together by now. We have another 40 million to mine. So we can give this entire fund to the Genesis DAO, and then manage also the rewards and the gen, what we call the gen mining program. So basically allocating gen tokens algorithmically to contributors of value of all kinds, like voters, DAO founders, proposers, stakers, and everything. And then the purpose, what's the purpose of this DAO? The purpose of this DAO is to create anti-rival collaboration. So reward and incentivize for actions that benefit, like open source code, for example, that benefit the entire ecosystem of partners that are enjoying this, or their shared interest, basically. And the other part is coordinating DAOstack ecosystem players, so NextDAO, DXdao, soon Prime DAO, and a few other DAOs, and coordinate them along their shared interest. Again, helping them like super amplify that. So let me keep common for the end. I mean, if let's do the interesting stuff or the important stuff actually, and at the end, if we have more energy, I'm happy to also demo you common. And then the questions, I mean, the big questions is like, what do you think? I mean, when I say why do you need next? So it's not clear who is you, like who is the DXdao, but I'm asking you really, what do you think DXdao needs? That's what I'm asking. secondly, and again, we are learning what it means to work with DAO. By the way, we did that with Genesis. The company DAOstack worked with the Genesis DAO, and it was a rough learning experience. It wasn't clear to us who to work with, how to work with, and I can say we've learned a lot of lessons. I cannot say that we know how to do that well. We maybe know how to not do it not well. So another question is, how should we work together? Again, it's not clear, like who should we work with and how should it happen if you have ideas. Thirdly, how do we best align our interests? I really believe in aligning of interests, and that's just particularly myself. If there is anything that I can contribute to, I admit that I'm very limited in time, and that's also why I'm mostly at the back end. But usually every time I'm picking one or two projects that are the focus of the company at that period, usually a few weeks up to a couple of months, and I'm putting more attention on that project. So moving forward, this will be much more on my attention. So this is, let me end here. Let me just hear comments, questions, anything. And then once we feel saturated on everything, like any comments, I'm happy to dive back on this list, like the top improvements, the open questions, and the approach. So let me take a breath here and.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, there are some pretty big problems, and I think you touched on most of them, right? Like I think the scaling, gas costs, the generic scheme or the arbitrary actions, like so that it's more flexible. Like there's a whole litany of things that I think DXdao could benefit from being able to do, and being a DeFi focused DAO, there's basically every DeFi protocol is something that the DAO may want to interact with. So I think it's good that those are on there. Another idea that has been getting a lot of discussion and a little bit of work even is what we're calling it guilds or like kind of like sub DAOs, like communities within the DXdao ecosystem focused around, say one of the products or maybe the DXD token or something. So this idea of kind of like DAOs.
Yeah, totally.
Interact with other DAOs. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. This was, in fact, this was like the earliest vision, and we came again to see like that this is a little bit complicated feature, not impossible, but complicated. And we always said like, okay, we're gonna do like one guild, like one DAO work, fairly well, and then we'll start to fractalize. And yeah, up to recently, we didn't feel that even the one DAO functions well enough to go to the next step. And I think now it's just about the time that it's getting there. And there are several ideas. I know that Elon is in touch with you. I think actually the information is too scattered right now. Like I can share with you that there is probably among my mind, your mind, Elon's mind, Augusto's mind, and some others, Ezra, I think there is probably 6 different architecture for sub DAOs, and not even talking about how you reflect them as a product. So I think we would need, again, and it's a matter of priority. So if we decide, would you agree that gas and generic calls is more priority than guilds, for example?
It's a good question. Gas with the current, especially this week, seems pretty pressing, right? So I'm tempted to say that is the highest priority. On the other hand, where the guilds is kind of coming up is within the DXdao. We have Mesa, Omen, DX Swap on the way, and I do see that like there's kind of a current need for community specific governance around those products, but I think gas is more, in my opinion, the more painful problem right now.
Matan, did you mention the idea about the change of the voting power system? So that's relevant to guilds. I could
so
mention.
Yeah. The voting power, I didn't mention that. I didn't mention that. I mentioned that I think indirectly. So top improvement, simpler API, but particularly basically it's more easier interfacing with any voting system, reputation system, or not even reputation system, but any voting power system, basically. Yeah. So this would, I mean, this is part of Guild. I don't think this is the full-fledged solution for Guild, but this is definitely a functionality that will make it much easier to interact with guilds, basically to interact between DAOs. Yeah. But I mean, there is the interaction. It also depends. Okay, I need to ask you that it really depends what kind of interaction you're anticipating for guilds. For example, if you think about frequent interactions, then the challenge will be a product challenge. Like, how do you kind of like make a product that people can sanely look at things and understand what happens between all those meshes? If you think about like infrequent relationships, such as, for example, you have a mother DAO that holds all of the funds, and roughly on a monthly basis, it allocates funds and reputation to 5 guilds. If you think about this, I would not even bother to build an interface like a UI for this. You could just interact via generic codes between them. And then, as Ezra says, that this will just allow you to interface the voting power. But other than that, you wouldn't need, I don't think it would even, like, it wouldn't worth the effort to build the user interface for that.
So you can't, to prioritize, you can't have guilds unless you fix the gas thing, right? So, and if the solution to gas probably can't be like a layer 2 at this point, because if you move everything over to one of the layer 2s, we've been talking about like how you're going to move with everyone else. Like if all DeFi goes somewhere, you got to also be there, right? But temporarily, we were also discussing like, could we use DAOstack on something like XDAI?
Yeah.
Today, tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, we have DAOstack on XDAI already. We have Alchemy on XDAI. What is missing? And you could, I guess, 2 things, 1 or 3 things. Okay, 1, you need to take into account that XDAI is not as stable as mainnet, but we are working with XDAI for quite a long time. So Common is working on XDAI, so it's fairly stable. But I just need to say that. Secondly, it's more centralized. So as long as you're good with that, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think decentralized enough, but it's not as decentralized as mainnet. So you need to take that into account. And thirdly, I think that's the main thing, is that we still lack many of the bridges. I mean, there are bridges to bridge the DAI token to an XDAI token, but there are no generic bridges for generic calls yet. So if we could approach gas solutions from 2 ways. We could just build those bridges and basically aim at XDAI implementation, full XDAI implementation that can control generic calls and assets in mainnet. We can do that as a first priority, or we can already just implement the contracts on a layer 2 solution, which can control things on layer 1. So layer 2, when I say that, I mean that the thing that is on layer 2 is mostly the voting machine. The voting machine goes to layer 2. The actual assets are still held. I mean, you can do it in different ways, but probably that's the easiest way. The actual assets are held on layer 1. But anyhow, it's I cannot say much more than that. It's also not my expertise. But I'm just saying that there are different ways to attack gas solutions right now, and I think this is the number 1 priority. But I agree. You said that we cannot do guilds without gas. I feel that we cannot do almost anything without gas, solving gas.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Yeah. And I think if we're gonna build a good cheap solution for DAOs, I think there will be a lot of people who want to use it, and so I think it's a good thing to build. But again, I want to hear from you what's your biggest pain and also biggest opportunity. But you said guilds. So can you say, John, a little bit more about what's your vision for guilds? Like, again, I see different things that could fall under this tag name. So.
Yeah, Augusto has thought probably more about this, but I see it as, there's many different kind of interest groups or communities within the DXdao ecosystem. Like for us right now, the DXD holders, like basically the financial token holders, the Omen product users and contributors, and then same for like Mesa and then DXSwap. And then even within DXSwap, part of the vision here is that with a forking Uniswap and allowing governance of the fees, each kind of pool would be able to govern their own fees potentially. So you almost could imagine like essentially it would be a guild per token pair on DXSwap, right? So you're talking about hundreds, thousands potentially, even just within that single product. So I see like many of these, and I don't really have a clear idea on what it should be. I was even thinking it makes sense for us to deploy different experiments essentially, and to kind of see what works. And then eventually we could always migrate to the one that is better. But I mean, Augusto has thought and actually even started developing some of this stuff. So curious to hear what he thinks.
About the gears, the way, the solution that I'm pushing is creating what I call a guild standard. Is an ERC20 guild to basically create different, being able to have different implementation of the gears in different places of our system. Pretty much, you can compare it to Open Zeppelin ERC20, when you can use burnable, mintable, capable token and different features of a ERC20 implementation. Think of it the same as the guild, where you can have a guild that is going to be able to be logged, that is going to have signed vote, that is going to be able to execute only certain actions, and you will be able to add these features over the ERC20 guild standard, where we intend to use it in liquidity providers, pools on DXSwap, for just DXD token holder, for even DMG token holders. So even like Omen, if we can find a way to represent the voting power on the platform. So that's the idea of the guild, to make something standalone, that it only, the only relation that it will have with the voting machine is that it will have prep minted to it, and it will be communicated directly with the voting machine, right?
Yeah. So actually, that's actually what I want to ask. Like, so the guilds that you envisioned. So firstly, do they have their own reputation, the voting system, basically, voting distribution system, right?
Yeah, they are already distributed. You are just saying an ERC20. This is the guild. Like this is pretty much like the voting machine using an ERC20 as, for example, reputation, right, which is not transferable. Here you will be able to use any ERC20.
Yeah.
Any ERC20 standard of voting power, but you will be able to decide how do you want this guild to work. Eventually, you can have from DXD different guilds implementations, for example, that you're going to be able to use your DXD on any of them.
Do you also think of them having different voting systems, not just distribution power, but I mean different logics?
Yeah. That's the idea, to have to increase the logic on selected logic that you want to use, depending on which type of guild and on which the guild is focused. The DXD guild is going to have a different focus and purpose than the liquidity provider. The NDMG holder guild is going to have a different purpose than DXD than liquidity providers. So these ones are going to have different actions.
Although the contract that you wrote can just call any function, right?
Yeah, actually, that's the ERC20 guild standard is very flexible, and it allows any non-arbitrary calls. But for example, the one that we are going to use for DXD is an ERC20 guild permission that only allows you to execute one function. That will be the vote on the DXD voting machine. So that's the only function that the ERC20 DXD guild is going to use.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't know if you probably haven't looked at this contract, Matan, but I showed it to Adam and Oren because it has a lot in common with all of the things that we've been discussing.
Adam told me, I spoke with Adam today, and he told me that there is a high similarity between what I'm building and what Adam is designing. So I think it's a good sign. And do you imagine it has its own interface, like UI, like? I'm going to be not
its own UI. First of all, we want to have our own UI on DXD where you can vote independently there on DXD as DXD holder and express your agreement or disagreement with an Alchemy proposal, right? Where if you reach a certain amount of token holders, reach a threshold or to vote for yes or no, the vote will happen on the voting machine on DXdao. That is how we envision the big something working as a standalone. And that is what we are currently building and we are going to be testing on Koban.
So again, like the guild, they share the same UI with like all guilds share the same UI, or each guild has its own UI?
Maybe each guild is going to have its own UI. I saw something very, very interesting that is a snapshot app, which I practically I don't think I don't think it's very useful. It's just for signaling, but I can imagine seeing something like that for years in 20 years, where we can implement, where we can have all our guilds listing something like that. We can even fork that and make it all with ERC20 guilds, because the standard is going to be the same, but the logic behind the votes and how the votes are executed and what you can do with them is going to be different.
What are the other problems that you see in Alchemy? Like what's the problem that you have with Alchemy?
Voting machine. Voting machine is I think it's extremely costly, and it can use some very small tweaks and implementations to, for example, allow the refund of gas on chain, where right now DXdao has reached a point where it has a lot of funds, and governance is our top priority, and we want to keep our governance alive. I guess we wouldn't mind to spend like 20 Ether, for example, per month to have our governance system alive.
Yeah.
I share. I even share with DAOstack developers implementations of signed and payable voting machines. Those are the ones that we are going to also be using on Koban. What I intend to be testing on Koban.
But when you say the voting machine, like in terms of a problem, you only mean to gas-wise, or like other problems of the voting machine? Like what other problems you see in there?
Yeah, gas refunds, and also like the ability also to share, for example, signed votes. It can use a huge update, and how can you say, like optimization? Yeah,
optimization. But I mean more from a product standpoint, like what, again, like I'm trying to feel your biggest pain in Alchemy. Like you spend time to develop new contracts, you spend time to develop new interface, which means it's something you could have been like working better. So I'm trying to understand what that thing is.
Well, it's everything on our DXdao contract repository. I'm implementing a new DXD voting machine, which is the fork of Genesis protocol. It is Genesis protocol, but it uses, for example, DXD for staking. It allows to share signed votes, where you can sign a vote even on another, for example, on another network. You can share a vote that can be signed on Koban for a voting machine. That if you have the same voting machine deployed on mainnet, since the algorithm and the count that you use on Koban, it can be used on mainnet, you can share the signature of the vote on Koban and forward it to mainnet, or even to signal votes, where I'm adding another stage of the vote where you will be like signaling a vote, and then this vote can get executed or added on chain. Where actually signaling will be like saying, "Hey, I'm okay with this proposal," and that will be way cheaper than voting. But it will be actually voting. It will be just a cheap signaling. So all the changes I have been implementing, I have a DXD voting machine that I'm implementing, the wallet scheme that is also like is practically a generic scheme that allows you to call to make how would I say it, multiple generic calls at the same proposal. So those are a lot of things that we are going to be testing on Koban.
That sounds a bunch of like unique, specific DXD related tweaks and things which other tokens could use, but like you're kind of asking like if gas was really really cheap and DXdao has been using DAOstack for like the last year now, like John and Augusto and Geronimo and stuff, they've been used like it does most of everything you want, right? Like okay, maybe it doesn't like it has been working, right?
Alchemy. Oh, so if we're talking about alchemy specific, so I think Augusto's talking a lot about kind of the underlying smart contracts. That's maybe more of a, like ARC things. If we're talking about alchemy, like the front end,
But like, does it accomplish what the DAO needed to vote on and stuff like that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's worked. I do think there's a lot of areas of improvement. I mean, I think one thing that I find increasingly painful is, I mean, now that DXdao has over 200, past proposals, a lot of these are actually, quite relevant, into the future, right? Like there's agreements that have basically been made. For instance, the DMM grant, which is worth, something like $4 million in the treasury now. People come into Telegram and they're like, why aren't we spending this money? What are we doing with this? Why do we have so much DMT token? Well, you have to point them back to the original proposal, right? Because that was where the agreement was made between the DMM people and the DXdao. And in that agreement, it's like, we're going to hold these tokens so that we can participate in the DMM governance. So I find myself frequently sending that alchemy, like I've basically bookmarked these different proposal links because I am going back to them a lot of times. But essentially, like there's this long history, and it's not easy to access, right? It's not easy to see what's happened. It's not easy to see. I mean, it's a very one-dimensional, right? You go to that one page and you have a chronological history of proposals, and you have to scroll down and reload. Not only do you have to scroll down and reload, but when you go into one and then go back, if you want to find it again, you have to reload it all again, right? So it's really cumbersome to navigate the proposal history. And there's like, I could give you a dozen ways to improve that, like off the top of my head. That's probably the biggest thing for alchemy. Beyond that, I mean, there's also, DAOstack's complicated, right? Like I find myself, even after months of using it, sometimes I realize there's like an aspect that I maybe didn't quite understand or had forgotten. And I think, even for the DXdao, there's active users that don't really understand how it works or how to do it. And I think you could help that a lot with the UI. And then the other big thing I think is, and this is part, I think, of why I don't want to speak for Augusto, he can chime in, but why the fork, he forked Alchemy is because it's dependent on centralized services. And ideally, DXdao is kind of trying to be maximally decentralized. And ideally, it would not be hosted on, it could be hosted on an IPFS and not rely on the graph. I mean, I understand that there's performance reasons why that's important, and maybe the graph.
Yeah, actually, by the way,
decentralized.
Our early version of Alchemy was on IPFS and was without the graph. So
Yeah.
Actually, the first version was exactly that, but it took, I don't remember, I think half a minute to load. So it's just a matter of choice, right?
Now, is that half a minute to load because it's supporting every DAO, or is that even just for a single DAO?
I think it was like half a minute for a single DAO, and then
Yeah, it was like
the more severe problem
when there was one DAO with
that was with one DAO, but then when it grew, but the loading time grew with the more DAOs we had, so it was actually, or the more members we had, so it was a real problem, and we spent a lot of time of doing caching well. I think, I mean, look, this is a choice, right? Yeah, this was like 2 years ago. This is a choice. I think that one choice is to go off, like graph, for example. Another choice is, or like servers. I think, yes, mostly the graph, really. We're not running our own servers just for the chat, but we're not running servers for the DAO. We're not running servers at all. So it's just the graph. So one way is to get off the graph and say, okay, we are fine with that kind of like loading time. But I think it's almost, I mean, you can run your own instance, but still it will be quite painful. The other is to wait for the graph to decentralize, because the graph has already, I think, launched a testnet, if I'm not wrong, for their decentralizing protocol. So, I mean, yeah, this is a choice. Like, for most users, I think the choice is almost trivial. Like most users will simply not use the app if it's loading for like half a minute or more. But yeah, but maybe I don't know. Maybe for some users it makes sense to choose that.
Yeah, it's a thing for us to keep in mind. I'm sure this is something that you guys also realize. Like a lot of the rest of the space is less interested in this than you are. So it's just something that, you know, we need to try to find something that will work. But
yeah.
I think
I
generally
guess
simplifying the system will make it easier to do that, right?
Well, there is a lot of information about, you know, proposal that becomes immutable once it happens, you know, when it's expired. And instead of relying on an event-based database, one of the things that we could do as a DXdao, where I think that would be a solution, is to maintain a cache on IPFS on one of our ENS domains. For example, it can be like cache.dxdao.eth. We can update that every 2 weeks, every month, with all the information that became immutable, and start the application from the cache from the cache. Therefore, we will only need to get like, I don't know, the last proposal in the last week or 2 weeks. That will increase a lot the performance, and the loading time shouldn't be that much. Even more if you have even one scheme like what I'm playing on in Koban, using only 2 schemes, the master wallet and the quick wallet scheme, where you can do everything just from 2 schemes, because you are allowed to do multiple channel calls in one proposal. So it will be loading everything from 3 or 4 smart contracts, just that controller, 2 schemes, and repetition.
What do you think about maybe I really want to ask you directly? What do you think of, like, I want to hear from, in a way, unbiased people. Like, what do you think about holographic consensus? Do you see its vision? Do you understand it? By the way, it has no good documentation at all, and also much of the thing that we've sort of like research is not implemented, so it's almost impossible to see the full picture. But still, like, what do you think of it as generally as a tool for scalable DAOs? What do you think about the problem? Is it needed? Is it not needed at all? Is it needed, but maybe not optimized? It should work better.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's just the way to solve it. I think it's the way to scale organizations. So, yeah, I think holographic consensus is awesome.
Cool. Do you understand it? I mean, maybe I guess I wasn't put enough effort to communicate that, I think, but do you see the vision of the reason I think why gen utility actually matters? Is it because once you have a really big organization, let's say you have 5,000 developers, you have 5,000 proposals in line, the attention of the organization itself is not sufficient. You cannot, by definition, you cannot rely on the internal attention of people for staking. So you have to have a greater network of staking, either a professional network of stakers that's what they do for their day jobs, but better staking bots. So it's actually possible to develop really good bots that make real predictions based on history, based on all sort of data, big data, and AI, and so on. And of course, those bots can also be hybridized with people. Like, the bots can sometimes ask questions and get people asking their opinions and getting it's like learning. And we actually developed some prototypes which worked very nice. Like, we developed one prototype for the Genesis DAO, and we ran the bot backward to see how it would predict on history, and it actually was predicting extremely well. So, and then once you have this network effect of predictions, then you can just scale free. Like, you can scale freely, even if you scale for thousands of proposals. You can still have the attention that constantly guards you. You have like a bigger attention than your own attention that constantly guards you, and each and every proposals ensure that it cannot pass without being to a good degree representative of the organization. Like, you cannot like basically guard you from malicious acts, but also from just wrong decisions.
Yeah, more than bots, I like people taking money on making like decisions quicker. I think that's the real security of the platform. Like
Yeah, you mean
people
the
staking.
people?
Yeah, I think for me it's all about the users, the user there. If you that's the beauty of holographic consensus, that someone needs to really want to see it happen. And it shows the sentiment of the words, right? And it gets you an overview of what is going to happen. So yeah, and about bots and automating that process, I think that it will be a long time. It will be a long time since DXdao needs something like that. Maybe if you think, yeah, maybe it is you guys are thinking of that because you are being in common, and it's going to be it's going to be done to work with huge organizations where, yeah, it makes sense to have bots there, but not something on DXdao, I think.
I also am a big fan of holographic consensus, and I'm always like talking about it when we talk about DXdao. I think I agree with what you said. Like I don't know if we've really pushed it like to the point where it can really show its value. Just like we haven't had that much throughput in proposals, but even just the concept of the relative majority and having some system to enable that, like I think that has helped DXdao actually scale its decision making.
Okay, cool. What else? Like maybe just going back to the product. Like, what do you think about a new product? Like now we are putting much effort into a new product versus. It's also related to the second question. Like we could have done much effort in improving Alchemy as is, but keeping its architecture, or maybe making small iteration on Arc, or again, like designing a whole new architecture, something very similar to what Augusto is doing, and then it's just a different product. And again, I'm asking that because essentially we have certain capacities. So putting much effort on a new product means putting very little effort on alchemy, on current alchemy. So you'd get a really good product. For example, maybe it would serve perfectly your guilds, but the alchemy will stay like pretty much the same for a few months.
I'm not sure how you're thinking about the planning, like, but in my mind, doing small iterative things is generally a better approach.
Also,
I mean,
like needing an answer to those questions in a week, just right now from this call, from I don't know how many are here of the community. Yeah, is you won't be able to get an answer from the whole community in a few
No,
days.
for sure. I mean, we have been discussing this with many people for a long time, but I just want to get like, a few people's perspective as much as possible. I can also tell you that even within our team, there is almost opposite opinion on every question that you ask. So don't worry. I mean,
yeah, I tend to have that. I tend to be in that position of getting so yeah.
Gusta and I were just disagreeing on something before we got on this call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky situation, right? So what I would propose pretty tentatively is that there are some things, like for example that proposal history thing, that we should really just be doing, and I think we are doing. Should be in there soon, that particular one. But small things like that, we should just be doing, and we will continue to do. But that there are some other questions here that do require some kind of like longer term thinking. Like obviously the gas prices is one of them, but also having a more flexible voting power standard so that you can do things like experiment with different ways of setting.
But that's what I'm talking about. So for example, let's take actually the example that you mentioned. So simplifying generic calls and simplifying voting standards. Right. We can either do these improvements on Alchemy, or do it on the new product, but in the next 3 months, we won't be able to achieve both on them in parallel because there are big changes.
Right.
So,
My point is either way, like basically those are big changes either way. So either way, big changes are happening.
yeah,
I'm trying to understand.
I'm trying to understand from you guys, DXdao, if we are developing that from the new product, would that serve DXdao in some way, or maybe not at all? Because I mean, maybe it will serve it because you're going to use it as guilds, but maybe not. So I'm trying to understand if we're going to make it as a new product, whether it's going to serve at all DXdao or not at all. That's the question really.
What will be a new product? Like,
Yeah,
that is what
the new product we're speaking about is very similar to actually the guild that you're speaking about. Is basically a much simpler contract that can do generic call, that can, that has simple voting machine, that can interface any ERC20 for reputation. So basically it's a simpler version. It's like a mini version of Alchemy. It's a guild interface. It's a mini DAO interface. And then we can make this improvement. We can solve gas cost. We can solve a generic call easy interface. We can solve interface with any ERC20 reputation system. But I'm just saying these are big changes. So either we do those changes on Alchemy, or we develop them on the mini, let's call it the guild product. I mean, we will do both, long term. But in the next 3 months, we're gonna do those iterations on either Alchemy or on the mini Alchemy.
So one way to boil it down would be to ask the question like this. If we're going to do these things, would your preference be for us to alter Arc as it currently is? So the underlying infrastructure is still the same structure, but there's some new set of schemes that do these things. Or would you rather us simplify the entire underlying infrastructure, basically make another next version of Arc that is just a much simpler thing in general, trying to kind of follow where we think the trends are going, make it easier to do more stuff down the line, but bigger changes now. And we're talking about the infrastructure because the UI is the same either way.
Ideally, if I could kind of like have it how I wanted, I think I think ideally we would work together on solving specific problems, and then in 4 months or however long, like a new product for DAOstack will emerge out of that, right? And it's because DXdao, I think, is in a unique position. I would say in blockchain, I think we're in a very unique position that like you can look at the YFIs and all the ones that Aragon's doing and stuff, but a lot of them are not really doing it in the way that DXdao is, like to the extent that we're decentralized and doing it on chain and stuff. They're sort of relying on multi-sigs and signal voting, and they're hacking it together, right? I mean, they're going to want to move in our direction, I think. And I also think that, Prime DAO or Grid Plus is doing a DAO, and like a bunch of DAOs are going to keep popping up, and they're going to look to what's simplest. And I've had, probably half a dozen like teams that are about to launch something just reach out to me asking questions about the fundraising or about, DAOstack and whatnot. So, I mean, I think that like if we work together to solve specific problems, like that would move DXdao forward, and then out of that would emerge like, your next version of the platform for other desks. Yeah.
I think I think we agree with that. Yeah.
I think that's my main goal here. I think that if we are going to work together, we're absolutely gonna produce a better platform. So that's, and I think, and I agree with you totally that we're in a unique moment. I think that DXdao right now is the most interesting project, and like I think it's a mistake. Some people measure like how DAO important, like how much is locked in its platform. Like for example, like Wiren and Sushi, and they have like much more in the locking. But I think that's the wrong metric. I think the metric is much more interesting. Metric is how much active its builder community, for example. And I think those communities will actually turn to building communities, and they will look for those products, and they will see. I think DXdao is in a way showing the way for others, and more so, I think if it's going to succeed to keep growing like that, at some point will just become a network effect that it will be almost impossible to compete with. I mean, that's what was the first vision from the beginning. And I think in order to get to there, I think we just need to align all forces and try to move as much as possible in the same direction. And that's why I'm organizing this call, to understand, like, you know, those big problems we can work on together. But, and also to ask how we can work on them together. Like the problem is that we're somewhat working in different silos, but I think if we are able to start to work more closely together, I think we'll just produce better platforms.
I mean, I think the easy way to, not the easy, but the best way to kind of direct that, I mean, we're forced to kind of work this way, is there's specific problem, like the gas thing is a huge problem. That's why Augusto's already started thinking about the Koban stuff and the scalability. We're about to launch DXswap, so we need to think about, you know, how will we enable the governance there and the guilds around that. DXD holders are up in arms about, you know, DXD suffrage movement, and we need to help them by doing the guild.
That's awesome.
So, like, you
Maybe,
know.
maybe we
That's
can just
awesome
make
that
proposals.
That's what it's called.
Maybe we can just make proposals to the DXdao and try to just get those problems.
Yeah, exactly. We're desperate for development help. Augusto can't do everything across all of our stuff, and we only have a few other developers. So, I mean, if we could kind of scope it to, like, okay, we have this need, like, I mean, DXdao could even fund development, right? If it is for DXdao. And I mean, even if we do a couple of things like that, see how it goes, and then it should give you, I would think it would give you guys ideas on like what the actual generalizable pieces are, right? And
okay, so that I think that's a good direction, but then I think it would be better that when we make the proposals, we already very synced already. So like work with who are the people we should work with, sort of like to think about the problems and the solutions, such that once we submit those proposals, it's already like past, you know, sort of like past the consensus in some sense.
I guess it depends how you think about this. Almost like this, a guild as like several experiments idea. It could be actually different groups, right? Like Augusto's working on DXswap, like Geronimo's like and Caden are working on Omen. There's the DXD question, right? And like Chris is super involved in like the kind of big picture governance questions that we're trying to tackle. Sky is very involved in Omen, is going to get more involved, and also is involved in, like, so I mean, I think there's potentially like a set of proposals that could be made, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think I see the vision. Like I see how it could work.
And the other thing I would say is that I think there's a big kind of underlying problem that hasn't gotten much airtime yet, but it's going to be a big deal, which is that the whole DXD question, right? So like DXdao has kind of gone through this evolution, the initial staking period, things kind of went quiet, there were no funds. A group of folks like launched the fundraiser and issued DXD. DXD is not incorporated into the governance system. So to me, that's a huge issue long term. Like right now it's fine, but
I totally agree with you. In fact, when we started to design the token sale way before the token sale, we actually tried to design it as 2 steps, like one to the token sale, but the other step is such that you get voting power from the same tokens. When you lock them, you get voting power. We actually made it in early design, but we never followed up with that. I really do think, I mean, that's just my own self-opinion. I really think that would be very powerful if we just now implement a voting, like adding voting power distribution for people who lock their tokens for long term. We've designed that module for NECDAO, which I think is a pretty good module. So in fact, probably you can just use that module as it is. It even has an interface which the org, we've designed it and built the contracts, and the org built the interface. So I think this should, like, you should look at that.
So I actually helped Thomas Spofford build that interface. I'm pretty familiar with the locking for rep scheme, and I view it more as a short-term solution because and I think it's something we should do, but as an avenue for DXD holders to have some say in governance, but I don't think it solves the underlying problem of aligning rep with DXD because
so aligning rep, when you say aligning rep, I see two, maybe just clarifying, I see 2 things when you say aligning rep with DXD. One is to give rep to DXD holders, and I'm suggesting to do that with locking and even maybe just with the same module, so you can just do it tomorrow. or the other way around, which is giving DXD to rep holders. So this could be something like a dividend scheme where you distribute some portion of the DXD minted to rep holders. So you mean the latter one?
No, I
Both,
think
both,
yeah.
both of those solutions goes against the manifesto of where rep is earned. So that is that goes against one of the cornerstones of the of DXdao. That is where a DXD deal will solve the issue, because
in what
DXD
sense?
holders will come.
Can you explain
Because
what sense?
yeah, one of the things that is present manifesto of DXdao is that reputation is earned. So if we present something where you can lock DXD or you can get a reputation exchange of in just a token transfer, that will be against one of the first ideas of the organization. This is the good thing about the ERC20 guild, where you can say, okay, DXD holders, they just have 10,000 rep, and if half of the DXD holders that lock the reputation, that lock their DXD tokens here, agrees that this decision should be taken, or they want to vote for or against these proposals, this vote will happen. This vote will be executed, and these 10,000 rep will execute their power. But that's it. Where the distribution is just a reflect of the sentiment of a group based on the ERC20 tokens, and that reputation can be burned or mint from DXdao, where DXdao should always be over the top of everything and have complete control of the reputation to avoid any civil attacks, all the stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is a super interesting problem, and I do actually think that the more generalized voting power interface will allow this kind of experimentation a lot. But I actually think that the most important thing for us to continue in this conversation is figuring out how we're going to work on these problems together, starting from here. So we're obviously not going to answer these questions right now.
Yeah, I'm not, like, my intention in bringing this up wasn't to solve it now, but my point is that there is a fundamental architectural, like DXdao specific, maybe this extends to other DAOs if they do a similar model, but it's like the idea of we have illiquid voting power in the form of rep. There's the mantra that rep is earned, and that's, I think, kind of deeply seated already into the culture, and then DXD is bought. In the long term, though, nothing protects the financial interests of the DXD holders from being kind of cut out by the rep holders. Once, like, I think for the short term, it's protected because there's no revenue, and therefore, like, the DAO needs to raise funds and can't. There's no reason to screw over the DXD. That'd be a terrible decision on the rep holders. But if the DAO is successful and brings in continuous, like, revenue flows, then there's really no need for the venture capital, and the rep holders could simply cut the DXD holders out. And so that's, like, the fundamental issue that I think needs to be solved for. And my only real point in bringing it up now is that problem and that need is going to kind of mandate a redesign of the governance for DXdao and a migration from whatever we're at currently or even to that new system. So I guess my point is that, like, there will be a migration to a new system just based on that need alone.
I think that lines up a lot with what we've been talking about, and I think it's a great problem for us to work on together, because while I think you guys are in a somewhat unique situation, I think that the general problem that is touching, all these DAOs are going to struggle with it, because all these DAOs that are purely doing this kind of plutocratic voting now, if they last a long time, they're going to start running into the problems.
I'm actually pretty bullish on the illiquid governance meme or idea, and I think DXdao and by extension, or we're really more of an extension of you guys. So it's like, in the same boat, you guys. This, I think, is also a big deal. The right now, all these ERC20 governance tokens are hot and out there and securing ever larger ecosystems and DeFi. And I don't know if you guys seen Power Pool, but it's gotten a lot of attention. But, like, I think that idea, whether they do it or it's individual instances around specific projects, the idea of pooling liquid governance is dangerous for liquid governance. It's going to result in some kind of an attack, and I think it will only take one, or even just the idea of the attack, I think is going to cause people to take a much more serious look at illiquid governance systems. You see Vitalik tweeting about it and stuff.
Totally. I think it's just a time bomb until there will be basically on-chain bribery attack or something like that. I mean,
yeah. And when that happens, that day that happens, Gen is going to skyrocket.
Well, we have to be
DXd
prepared.
is going to skyrocket. And a lot of people are going to be asking how to implement the rep system.
But that's why we should continue to work on this problem, because what's become clear for you guys is that there's a lot of value in the illiquid governance power, but it's not this problem isn't totally solved, right? Like, so we need to keep improving the idea. Like, okay, because you also have these token holders, they need to be involved in some way. We need to come up with some kind of hybrid system or something, right?
But yeah. I just want to say, I don't want to dive in right now. I just want to say we have placed a lot of thoughts on this problem. We have like hours and hours of conversation with, by the way, with Martin and Stefan on that. And also with, at some point, Andreessen Horowitz wanted to invest in DAOstack. And that was the number one problem that they want to understand, how we protect from on-chain bribery attacks, for example. So we really spent hours and hours of conversation about that. And I think we have some interesting solutions, and some of them are not implemented. I do think you can have some sort of like token-related voting power and still safety from manipulation, but it's a long discussion. So I'm happy, really happy to make this discussion. I don't know, with the group of people that are interested in that. Maybe we are already running long, like an hour and a half. Let's are you interested to see like a few seconds of common, or like what's your level of interest in that?
Yeah, just wanted to say that before finishing that, what I think that the next steps could be is like we have developer calls each Tuesday. And I think the most important calls where you guys want to be involved are the developer and governance call. The governance call happens every Wednesday, where, I guess everything what we hear today, it will be awesome for the rest of the community on the governance call, or even one weekly call where we can just touch DAOstack and give an overview of how DAOstack and their interests are in DXdao will be important, because those are recorded and public. So I guess like continue communication there and in a development chat on Keybase and start collaborating together. That will be the way to go.
Yeah, I would also add that, we probably need perhaps like a specific call between DXdao and DAOstack to dive deeper into all of these issues, and basically start with action items.
Maybe we can just add another, let's say, platform call. Let's call it platform call, like a weekly call it's open for everyone, but the focus is basically how do we do this collaboration better, improving both governance and product. And this, like, I think if we do it even just for a few weeks, I mean, maybe we'll continue it forever, but if we're just doing it for a few weeks, we'll just do a lot of mileage to synchronize our efforts. I think, for me at least, it will be the easiest way to sort of like to align our directions. Just having like regular calls that we have like time to speak.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to transition the governance call to this, or to schedule another call.
You're right. We can also just use the governance call for that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, that's what we're doing, governance. So in some sense, anything that you talk about governance is relevant for this discussion. So I don't know. That's another option if you want just transition gov call to that. But if not, we can also do just a separate call.
Yeah, but this is pretty technical. I think that the place will be for some things it will be the governance call, and for another topics will be the developer call. Where we have, for example, we have time in the developer call to discuss, to add DAOstack to the agenda, to the daily agenda that we always discuss, which is just a list of our products. So one of the topics that we can touch is DAOstack technical integration or DAOstack technical requirement, where you can guys enter and we can give an update of our needs, or what we think that, or what we need this week, or what do you guys need from us. We can just collaborate technically there. And on the governance call, yeah, the governance code is pretty bad.
There's a lot, yeah, there's a lot of non-technical
Yeah.
things that need to be ironed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what the answer is. I mean, if you guys remember, I wrote up that document like a few weeks ago where I was starting to touch on a lot of these issues and saying like, we've got this idea to solve this problem, this idea to solve this problem. And I mean, we basically have been running into the problem of it's just hard to get people's eyeballs from DXdao. Like there's so many important issues and things going on.
If you
I mean,
want
I would
eyeballs,
love
create an alchemy proposal.
So you're going to stop
I mean,
the
maybe that is what we should do. I don't know, but
I mean, I can tell you it's
Yeah.
very effective. You will get attention.
It's just so costly right now to make a proposal.
Yeah, exactly.
$100
But I mean,
for your attention.
yeah. Well, but you know, like it's not like we would have to do it that often. So,
But
I mean,
I
if
mean, I
that's the
think
way to
we're-
do it, okay, maybe that's
I
the
think
way.
people are more than willing to kind of join these types of conversations. And you can always create a call like this. You can always join.
Yeah.
The governance calls happen every week at the same time. Yeah, I realize that the time zones aren't great for everybody. You know, it's kind of, I don't know, an open problem. But yeah, the governance call, the dev call every week. And I mean, I sort of think the way forward is to pick a problem and then like, let's work together on it.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think it's a good. I think it's a good. We could call it like a dev cycle. It can be a few small problems and one big problem, but we could do like a dev cycle. We can attack those problems and bring it to end. You're gonna give us appetite to do more, and I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, just one other thing, I guess, in terms of John recently put together like a 5-point plan, which is kind of like working on a lot of these things. And like, I think the governance part of it is kind of would be great to kind of use that as the place to discover this, because we're kind of talking about solving immediate problems, but also planning that kind of creating that long-term, what is the long-term strategy on that. And I think that we will have a proposal for that, and that could be kind of like a way to work on these things, because I think part of it is eyeballs, but part of it is like the government, you know, how to even, we're trying to answer like, how is the long-term alignment between rep holders and DXD holders, and like that's not decided like on a call like once, you know, a week. That's kind of something that's like a much longer term strategic thing, and I think we're struggling actually on how to think through and address those, because they're like important, but they don't feel pressing as some other things. And so I'm hoping that this like 5-point plan and the way that we maybe can engage on longer term strategic initiatives off of that could open up some space. And I think like that would be definitely the way, a great way for you guys to kind of be involved in that.
Sounds cool. Yeah, I'm actually excited about the possibility to actually be involved through the system, like making proposals, and I think it's a good. I like it actually. So I don't know, any other important questions or something you want to raise or before we end? Okay, so what about common? Is it a yes or a no? Like,
Yeah. Well, I'm down to stick on the call. I don't want to make people stay if they're ready.
Yeah. I want to check it out.
okay. So let me just share screen.
It's going to be short, right?
Yeah. It's going to be like
Okay.
3 minutes. So I'm just sharing my mobile. So yeah. So these are my 3 kids.
Good.
Yeah.
Something interesting on common maybe is that this still uses alchemy in the backend.
Yeah.
It still uses
Arc. Yeah. It's actually using Arc 2, which by the way is a bad name. I think it should be 1.5. It's not worthy of the title 2.
Yeah.
No, seriously, like it should be 1.5. Anyway, so this is common. It's running on XDAO, on the XDAO version of Arc 2. By the way, this is also incorporated with bots, the staking bots. There is staking behind. Everything behind is there, including the staking bots, but it's all automated. It's all abstracted. It's all behind the scene. The idea here was that we're going to the mainstream, and the user should not know that he's using the blockchain. That's the idea. And the next version will also come on layer 2 rather than just XDAO. So it'll be the real blockchain. the idea was to get the ideas of DAOs to the common, and we call it common. So we don't even use the word DAO, we just call it a common. And to take it, you can think of a DAO as sort of like, you could think of a DAO as a decentralized extrapolation of companies, and this is DXdao as an example. But you could also think of a DAO as a governing extrapolation of social networks or Facebook groups. So you have, Facebook groups of tens of thousands of people around shared causes. It could be communities. It could be neighborhood communities. It could be like a protest or just like some agendas or causes. And if you just let those communities raise their funds, like each person gives $10 a month, they would have like really significant funds, and then they could pursue their causes in a much greater effect. But then they need to govern those funds commonly, like collectively. So that's what common does. So you can see the different commons. Actually, I wouldn't be able to demo properly because we just reset the database. So I'm not a member right now of any common. So I won't be able to show you all of the functionalities, but you would be able to imagine. So I can just see the commons that are being offered. I can quite easily open a common. So you can easily like understand what's happening, but you can collaborate around shared agendas. You can pull funds and make decision. And then to launch a common is quite easy. You just make it a name. So let's just call it the DXdao common. And what it does, whatever, everything. And you have like a long description of like what, how are you going to operate, what's the cause that you're organized around, and so on and so forth. You can define what's the minimum contribution that you need to make in order to become a member. And you can tune the common, whether it's like a single time contribution or a monthly recurring contribution. So let's make it like a $25 minimum. There is some safety period. Let's just make it today. And then, you can plan the agenda, like what are the agenda for this common, how we're going to operate, the rules of conduct, like a Facebook group basically would have. And you can put a picture, and then you deploy the common. I won't deploy it right now because it wouldn't take like 20 seconds. So I want to save your time. Actually, you know what? Let me deploy it. You will wait. No, I need to, because I want to have that common for myself for the next demo.
Yeah, deploy it.
So, yeah. Okay, so DXdao common. So let's publish the common. So this is now, it still takes too much time. So it's running with DXdao, but this is taking 2 transactions and also some, in between things. So it still takes like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. We're gonna reduce that. There are several different ways to do that. So, but we wanted firstly to have the system working. And since this is an action that's gonna take, like you're gonna do very infrequently. So we are less worried about it for piloting sake, but as you see, it's gonna take some time. Okay, so I can go to my commons. This is now my common. So now I can actually demo more because I'm a member of the common. So you have the group discussion. This is very similar to Facebook married with Telegram. So you can make posts. So let's say DXdao on XDAI. Let's make that a topic. Negotiation. What do you think? And you can put files or images and so on and so forth. You can publish the post. So there you have a post. And then each post is basically starting of a conversation. And then you have, it's not like Facebook. You actually have like more like Telegram chat. It's like a real-time conversation happening between people. And so it's not like, it's not more like, not commenting. It's more like real-time conversation. And later we're going to add also a Slack-like thing. So the different posts. So this is the like a post. So the different posts will also be categorized between different channels. So it will be really very helpful discussion platform. And then of course the main thing is that once you have funds, you can make proposals. So I can make proposal. Let's fund Augusto I think it was very helpful. Or let's like do 25, 20. Oh, okay. I cannot make more. More than that. Oh, I meant 2,500. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say Augusti's gone. He left.
but I cannot make it because I have $0. So I right now we need to take it off. But right now we cannot make proposals more than what you have. But for demo's sake, it's not actually good because I cannot make any proposal. I can make a zero. I hope that Augusto will forgive me. I can make it $0.
Don't worry. I send you my address later. You can send me.
And then you can say like what's Augusto going to do with that and all that. You can add links and you can create a proposal. Again, this is communicated with blockchain. So again, you're going to take like, and also there is an error. So make sure there is a bug in here. Maybe it doesn't like the 0. I'm not sure. Maybe it doesn't like the 0. Yeah. I'm not sure what's the reason. Anyway.
The address is not know this.
Yeah. So once you would see a proposal, you can actually go and you can vote on it. And there is also discussion around every proposals. And here you would see the history. Here you would see the members. Sorry. You can see the members. I'm the only member. You can see the pending members. So once someone is putting the funds, he's requesting join, but then you're voting on his approvals. You can see the history of proposals. You can see the agenda. Oh, crash. You see? Still have crash.
Yeah.
Still crash. What do you think? Will we be ready for piloting in 10 days? It's on the verge.
Oh man.
If you don't pay Augusta, he'll either fork you or crash your app.
Right, exactly. Oh, so DXdao now is live. Okay, so maybe you can, maybe something here is no history. Yeah, you can see one in history. So this is a proposal in history. So you can see how it looks like. So this is the proposal. In this case, it's a $0 proposal. It was rejected. There was a conversation about this proposal, but I cannot participate because only members can send messages, and I can also not vote. But this one is ended anyway. Yeah, this is pretty much. If I want to join an existing common, I like it. I see the agenda. I see the members. I like it. I want to show you the agenda. Where is the agenda? Here's the full agenda. Oh, so the agenda is crashing. That's the point. Okay, the agenda is crashing. I need to remember that.
Where is the money on-ramp? Is there a wallet address in there or something?
Right. So right now, okay, that's a great question. In fact, that's their greatest delay. So right now, so we had a solution. We changed it. Right now, the solution seems to be, it's not finalized. We are now speaking with Circle. We're actually almost the first customer. Circle just opened an API for buying a USDC, managing USDC, and selling USDC. So right now, what would happen is that we're going to buy at the backend when you put your credit card, including credit card integration, all included. So when you buy, you put your credit card. So right now we are cheating. What would happen is that you're going to buy USDC, and that USDC is going to probably kept at Circle for us, and we are going to signal to DXdao. We're going to use fake tokens that you have the USDC, and then the common will make decisions. And once you want to transact out, we're going to signal Circle, transact out these tokens to this bank account.
But when you show dollars there, are you showing USDC? What is that showing?
So a dollar is basically signaling for a USDC that is held by Circle, but you're showing dollars, yes. And the next step would be to actually have it on chain. The problem with on chain is that the user experience is still not good enough. And we don't want to compromise on the user experience because we are turning to real audience. We have real initiatives. We have like about a dozen real initiatives that want to launch on this app. We have like a few hundreds users ready to launch. Really exciting. Like some communities, for example, neighborhood, they want to launch like a neighborhood community wallet to fund like shared equipment and events and all that. John is leaving, so the demo is ending, I think. Like,
oh no, I was just waving goodbye to Ezra.
Okay. So anyway, so I'm just saying that we don't want to compromise on user experience. So right now the money is not on chain. The money is staying with Circle. If we're gonna end the cycle with Circle, it's still not fully confirmed. And then the money on the DXdao is just fake money. And then the next step, we actually acquire the money, go take it to DXdao. But you see, there is bridges. There's like too much happening and too long. I think once we deploy to layer 2 solution, we would be able to actually make the money on chain. So would be probably like 4 months and something like that. But then once you want to join this, like you saw the agenda, I won't press the agenda because it crashed twice. But one, you can just request to join. You can basically introduce yourself. Who are you beyond like your generic profile for this DAO, for this common, sorry. You can say what's your donation. It can be the minimum or more. And then you can, this is just a demo sandbox credit card. So you can pay. And again, this will take like 20 seconds because you're again sending a transaction to the blockchain, maybe 10 seconds, I'm not sure. I think this one is one transaction. Yeah, and soon the request will be there and then people can vote on it. We have many more features already requested. We have been speaking with like about 100 users and maybe 50 founders, common founders. We already have like a long list of requests for features, but we really want to get it out of the market and see like, you know, how people actually use that. So this will be like, for example, the proposal. This is my request proposal to join the common. Yeah. And this is my profile. You can see all of the commons I'm part of, all of my proposals, my membership request, and so on and so forth. So this is about it, I think. If you have any questions on it or.
Very cool.
It's close to, you said you're launching pretty soon?
We're supposed to launch a pilot with 3-4 commons in 2 weeks. In this pilot, since the payment is not yet integrated, we are going to fund each member joining common up to 200 members per common. We are going to fund like $15. And the next iteration after we finish that pilot for like a month, we hope by that time to also have the payment integration fully and the app stabilized, and then we're gonna launch the app on app stores around the like mid-October.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Maybe you can use that for your guilds.
So we were actually just talking about deploying to DXdao. How hard would it be to deploy a DAOstack, a DXdao clone to DXdao?
Very simple.
That's very simple. Yeah. Almost instant.
Yeah, we've been supporting this for like a long time.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned it before, right? Like I was like, and now it's coming up because gas prices.
Yeah, let's do it. And I was actually thinking about this the other day, but you could actually also fund it with like, okay, let's put 10K USD in this DAO for like small tasks and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because
yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, while this call was going on, Oren, who's leading the conditional token framework at Gnosis, was kind of pushing in the Keybase for DXdao to deploy Omen to DXdao, because now Gnosis is deploying all their contracts, and he was kind of suggesting that it shouldn't be a lot of work for the dApps to also get deployed. But one issue would be, some of the DAO interactions with the, like some of the curation and stuff that happens with the collateral tokens and whatnot. So one idea is that if we had a clone of the DXdao on DXdao, then that could actually manage the DXdao deployed DXdao dApps.
Yeah.
I really hope that we would have very soon the layer 2. Like Oren told me that today he deployed the entire DAOstack, like Arc. He deployed like a DAO on off-chain lab solution.
Yeah, so, off-chain labs, that was the one.
Yeah. So it's already deployed. Like I'm hoping that we would see like something working in the next 2-3 months. But if not, I think we should definitely but maybe even then, maybe we can make a solution on DXdao, as Elon says, even just for like with some funding, not even controlling product, but just like for smaller tasks and management, you can just run it on DXdao. I don't know. Anyway, it's late here. It's midnight.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Thanks for getting on the call. It's very useful. I mean, I hope we can work more closely together, and I think there's a ton of opportunities to improve things and stuff.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I feel the call has kind of solved a lot of kind of, I don't know, maybe like broken telephone issues type stuff, and yeah, like if I had a goal for the call is to align DAOstack and DXdao better, and I think, you know, it's really beginning to look this way, and it makes me super optimistic and happy.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I think for me it's really fun to see all of the faces. I mean, it's much more much better much better than virtual avatars, and 3D is even much better than 2D, but that we'll do that another time.
Someday. And are we doing this again tomorrow? Is that the plan? Or
Elon told me that there are like a lot of some people wouldn't be able to make it this or that. So I said, that's fine. I can do it. I could do twice. So, but if nobody will come, we'll just cancel it. But yeah, I'm happy to make it another time, tomorrow, same time.
I imagine maybe some people would want to come tomorrow, but I don't know how many. It could be good.
Okay.
We could also maybe like continue.
Or we could just get on and maybe talk about next steps or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Actually, that's possible. We can also publish. We can just publish this call, the recording, to anyone, and continue tomorrow. And of course, if someone comes and asks question, we can just go back a little bit and then continue the next step. So that's only possible. So it's up to you. If you're keen to get onboarded tomorrow again, we can just take next steps. That's also fine.
Where would you guys recorded this, or where would you publish it? Because we have a DXdao YouTube now that we're like calls like this we're also putting on there as well for DXdao members. So unless you guys publish it somewhere,
I don't know. Like Elon just recorded that, so I guess he can just send you or publish wherever you want.
Yeah, I'll share it in the Keybase or.
I think we didn't say anything very sensitive, right?
Yeah, no. I think it's fine to share, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a long. Come watch this 2-hour call.
It's like a podcast.
Yeah.
Just listen to it as you do stuff.
They're at 1.5x.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm super optimistic. Really, I'm like super happy this happened and it happened this way, and there's so much alignment happening and understanding that the best path forward is to collaborate. So.
Okay, thanks, guys. I guess really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Tom. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Elon.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.